Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Andrew Bovarnick, the Global Head of Food and Agricultural Commodities Systems at UNDP. And it is a pleasure to be talking at this event hosted by the China International Center for Economic and Technical Exchanges, as well as the China Association for Trade in Services. I will be talking today about strengthening the resilience of MSMEs in the food and agricultural commodity systems space. So, absolute pleasure to be here, and let me begin. As we know, food and agriculture are facing multiple crises around the world, from COVID to climate to the recent global consequences from the Ukraine-Russia war and their impacts on fertilizer and wheat exports, etc. And we know that these crises will continue to come and to cascade, and they're not going to stop. So it's ever more important within the food and agriculture sector that we prepare for resilience. And we know that MSMEs are, within the sector, the most vulnerable and need the most assistance in becoming resilient to these weather and economic related shocks. When we consider food systems, we need to look beyond just agricultural production and into enterprises across the entire value chain and value chains related and functioning within food systems. And we need to realize how these micro, small, medium enterprises are heavily dependent upon and influenced by both larger agribusiness companies, and we can think about buyers, buying companies, traders, and retailers, as well as public entities that shape the policy and regulatory frameworks within which the MSMEs operate. In this regard, there is an increased recognition that food is not a sectoral issue and only governed by ministries of agriculture, but indeed requires a whole of government approach, as it touches on health through issues of nutrition, public works, for infrastructure for market access, environment for conservation of the natural resource base. And so therefore, all of these ministries have to be involved in shaping and supporting a resilient food system. Within the ministries, their strategies, budgets, policies, and programs all can influence the food system and the MSMEs functioning within it. So we really do need to think about a whole of government approach. So when we think about these influences and the resilience for MSMEs, we do need to consider the entire system that are influencing these MSMEs, the governments, the agribusiness, as well as consumers and other actors in the supply chains, and not only just focusing on the MSME itself. This therefore requires a shift in the entire food system and the engagement of all the key stakeholders in the food system across the policy and action spectrum. And even when we turn our attention to MSMEs in the food and agriculture space, we also must be cognizant that they are not homogeneous, and they need different strategies of support depending on their size, capabilities, and functioning within the food system space. We know that small and particularly micro enterprises have much more limited and fragile capabilities and much reduced ability to manage risks and shocks than larger, medium-sized enterprises. And we also know that farmers are very different from processors and more consumer-orientated companies that work on the value chain. And we do need to think about farmers as MSMEs, because farmers, even small farmers, are business units. They need to do their own financial planning, think about crop selection, sales, pricing, forecasting, etc. Even though they are small with limited capabilities, we must be looking at and supporting small farmers as enterprises in themselves. So what are the strategies that we can entail to support the resilience of MSMEs, given this systemic approach to considering thinking about managing and mitigating shocks. I would suggest that we can frame and structure assistance at 3 different levels: the enterprise level, the collective level, and at a policy level. So at an enterprise level, we can break that down further into different areas of capacity building needs for these MSMEs. There's technical capacity building, which can vary from agricultural practices to processing and quality assurance, depending on the nature of the business, but this is obviously key. But in addition and complementary to technical capacity building, we also need to provide enterprises with business capacity building, improve their ability for business planning, financial planning, accounting, marketing. All of this is essential for more robust agricultural-based businesses. And then in addition to that, there's also financial capacity. The need to be able to provide loans to farmers, give them access to credit, both for cash flow, very often needed for bridge financing for harvesting, but also for capital investment improvements. And this access to finance really, along with the capacity building support, should be viewed and provided in an ongoing manner and not as one-off limited interventions. And at UNDP, we have various experiences of large programs that have supplied MSMEs with this type of financing, access to credit, and capacity building. In different regions of the world where we have partnered with local financial institutions to construct with them and deliver credit lines, particularly linked to sustainability, with differential interest rates, and complemented by capacity building to enterprises seeking and getting approval for their credit lines. And this has proven extremely effective in providing that type of capacity building for resilience of enterprises. But in addition to these types of programs and delivery models, it is also, of course, extremely important to think about more effective farmer support systems, so actual trainings to farmers on agricultural practices. We see more and more this as a realm for both private and public entities, and how to blend expertise between them together. And again, UNDP has designed, and we deliver a tool to help all the stakeholders involved in farmer support systems to come together, assess the strength and capabilities of the existing support systems, and to co-create together what a strengthening or a plan to strengthen such systems could be. And this is really key, so that farmers really are able to access up-to-date best practices, technology, and data to support their farming practices. And last but not least, within MSMEs, we need to think about the leaders and the founders and the owners of these small enterprises, basically the entrepreneurs at the heart of the economic activity of these SMMEs. And I think it's so key that we help build their own leadership capabilities, provide these entrepreneurs with training on resilient mindsets, resilient psychology. You know, it's so easy for entrepreneurs to get down and disappointed and worried about shock after shock. But if they can be trained to be more resilient psychologically and be solution orientated, and support given to help them with their creativity, these entrepreneurs, we know, can drive forward a successful MSME sector. These types of capacity building programs that I've mentioned, the farmer support system tool, and indeed leadership training to entrepreneurs are all areas where UNDP is working at the cutting edge. And I think we'd be extremely pleased to see how we could help bring some of these tools and approaches to your own MSMEs and entrepreneurs. But this is only one level. As I mentioned from the beginning, we need to think beyond just the enterprise. And another important level of intervention where we really can start bringing together solutions in a more systemic manner is with regard to constructing what we call multi-stakeholder platforms. They could be at a national level, a subnational level. These platforms could focus on a sector, or it could be a product, or it could be a sub-part of a system. It could be urban food systems, it could be fisheries, it could be retail. This is really depending on the demand and scope of what the stakeholders need. But these platforms can really provide a voice for SMMEs and can help them connect to buyers, to investors, and to the governments. By bringing all the stakeholders into these platforms, it is very empowering for the entrepreneurs to be able to connect with these other influencers in the system to explain what they need and to see how to co-create solutions. These platforms are a space for ongoing dialogue, connectivity, and it is these types of platforms where solutions for long-term systemic change can be generated, which just cannot be generated through isolated one-off training interventions for enterprises. In Mongolia, we recently helped the government there set up, establish, and operate a sustainable cashmere platform, where it was a space for Mongolian herders, as well as MSMEs in the cashmere processing supply chain, to come together with retailers and international buyers to really work through what are the capacity needs of the enterprises and to build their resilience within the system. And I believe these types of platforms could be extremely relevant and important for the work you are all doing. And then finally, the policy level. We have to always include the powerful role that government play in both increasing the resilience of MMSEs in the agriculture sector and reducing vulnerability to threats. And there are various areas where governments can intervene, and just a few maybe to provide examples for. One can be on agricultural subsidies. We see this in many other countries, and again, UNDP is supporting ministries of agriculture and ministries of finance to look carefully at where subsidies are targeted and to shift subsidies and payments available to farmers and small businesses from a focus on increasing just production to really conserving their natural resource base, which is so fundamental for the sustained yield and productivity of agriculture. Pricing is another one. An example from West Africa on cocoa. The governments of Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire came together to agree on minimal floor pricing for cocoa to provide to cocoa farmers to help smooth out pricing and income to the farmers because of the volatility in cocoa pricing that we see. This type of pricing could also be brought to crops and production in China. And then finally, of course, another great example is the introduction of weather insurance and weather-related data that the government can help provide and offer farmers and MMSEs to help them with their planning, to provide safety nets, and really help them build resilience against the ever-increasing threats from climate. So, in conclusion, it's clearly a very complex area. We know that MMSEs are extremely vulnerable within a sector that itself is very vulnerable and increasing in vulnerability due to the connectivity of global production combined with increasing climate threats. And so what's absolutely key as I wrap up my speech is I really want to emphasize this message that we will benefit by looking at the whole food system and not just at enterprises, not just at the micro, small, medium enterprises and their capacity building, but everything that is driving the threats to these enterprises and to really look for solutions to address them and mitigate them. So this can, of course, be through capacity building to MSMEs to produce and perform better at technical level, financial level, managerial level, and business level, but also do consider more sector-wide support through multi-stakeholder platforms and programs. Do consider applying tools such as our farmer support systems that can look more collectively and systemically at support to farmers, as well as new programs for credit lines to MSMEs. And then finally, of course, to find mechanisms to work closely across ministries with governments at national and subnational level to strengthen the enabling environment and policy frameworks that can support these MSMEs. So I wish you all the best of luck with the conference and with building action plans and strategies for more resilient MMSEs in the agriculture and food sector, and particularly how UNDP can help you take this all forward. Thank you very much.